Ladies and gentlemen, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings living in a human body, and sometimes the spirit wakes before the body. You see, time is a human invention, but purpose is eternal. And when purpose begins to knock, it doesn't wait for your alarm clock. Have you ever found yourself awake at 3 a.m., not 3:10, not 3:25, but exactly 3:00 in the morning, eyes open, no noise, no trigger, just consciousness? Let me tell you something today that is not coincidence, that is a call. In ancient Hebrew culture and Roman military timekeeping, the night was divided into watches. The final one, from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., was called the fourth watch. This is the hour when Jacob wrestled with the angel. This is the hour when Jesus walked on the water. This is the hour when heaven invades the earth quietly while the world still sleeps. If you are waking up at 3 a.m., you're being summoned. Not by noise, but by necessity. Your destiny might be knocking in the silence. You say, "But I'm tired." So was Gideon, so was Jeremiah. But God doesn't wait for convenience. When your spirit is in alignment, it becomes sensitive to instruction even in your rest. The problem is not that you are waking up at 3 a.m. The problem is that you're trying to fall back asleep on a purpose that's trying to wake you up. Let me submit to you, the greatest revelations don't come in the noise of day, but in the whisper of night. This is when your subconscious is most open, the veil is thin, your mind is not distracted, the Spirit of God has fewer barriers. Waking up at 3 a.m. can feel like a mystery. You roll over in bed, the room is silent, and yet something inside you is wide awake. You look at the clock. It's not morning, it's not even close. It's 3 a.m. and it keeps happening. Many people brush it off as stress or insomnia. But what if I told you there's something deeper behind it? What if your spirit is alert while your body is trying to rest? You see, we are not just physical beings. We are spirit first, wrapped in flesh, living in time, and time itself responds to divine activity. Waking at 3 a.m. is not merely about a sleep cycle interruption. In spiritual understanding, it is often regarded as a moment of increased spiritual sensitivity. This is the hour when distractions are low, when the air is still and the world is quiet. When the noise of society dies down, the whispers of heaven are clearer. The spirit becomes more receptive because it is not being crowded by the chaos of the day. At this hour, you're not checking emails, not scrolling, not talking. Your mind is open and your heart can hear. Throughout the scriptures and spiritual traditions, we see patterns where divine communication happens in the early hours. The prophet Samuel heard God call him at night. Jacob wrestled with an angel until daybreak. The psalmist David spoke of rising early to seek the Lord. These moments were not random. They were intentional, and they came during hours when the body is supposed to be resting, but the spirit is stirred. This is why waking at 3 a.m. consistently can't just be reduced to anxiety or poor diet. While those can affect sleep, repetition with no clear cause often reveals a higher signal, and spiritual sensitivity increases when the physical world is still. At 3 a.m., your spirit is often more tuned in than your conscious mind realizes. There are dimensions of your being that respond to the unseen, to the eternal. When the atmosphere is quiet, the spirit becomes the loudest voice in the room. This is where ideas drop, where clarity comes, where conviction rises. You may find yourself thinking deeply about something or receiving insight you didn't ask for. And the reason is simple: your spirit is awake. It has been prompted, alerted, activated. Sometimes spiritual sensitivity shows up as restlessness, but that restlessness is not chaos. It is a shift. Something is moving. Something is being deposited. Something is calling your name. You didn't set your alarm, but your purpose did. There's an alertness in the spiritual realm that cannot be explained by natural logic. God deals with the heart, and the heart often listens best when the world is asleep. When you wake at 3 a.m., your ears may not hear a sound, but your soul can detect a signal. And that sensitivity is not a disruption, it's an invitation. When you wake up at 3 a.m. and your mind is stirred, pay attention. When it happens repeatedly, don't ignore it. You are not simply waking up, you are being awakened. Spiritual sensitivity is a gift, and it doesn't come by force, it comes by quiet. The most powerful instructions are not always shouted. Sometimes they're whispered, and the 3 a.m. hour is one of the clearest moments for whisper-level instruction. Your dreams are still closed. Your mind has not yet started filtering reality. It is in this space, between deep sleep and rising thought, that revelation often comes. Waking at 3 a.m. is not about superstition. It is about alignment. It is about awareness. The world is focused on schedules, but the spirit world moves on signals. When something inside you wakes you up and you don't know why, consider this. You may be standing in a moment of divine clarity. You may be positioned in a window where the spirit is louder than the soul, and the soul is more alert than the flesh. That's not coincidence, that's calibration. The concept of the fourth watch is rooted in ancient tradition, particularly in Jewish and Roman timekeeping systems, where the night was divided into 4 distinct watches. The fourth watch spans from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., and it holds a deep spiritual and symbolic meaning. In biblical narratives and historical accounts, this window of time is frequently associated with divine manifestations, supernatural breakthroughs, and moments of intense spiritual activity. It's not just a slice of the night, it's a season of divine timing. When you find yourself waking up during these hours, especially around 3 a.m., you are stepping into a time that has been considered sacred and spiritually charged for generations. In the natural world, this is the darkest part of the night, just before the dawn. Symbolically, it represents the moments before change, the transition from darkness to light. That symbolism matters. Many significant biblical events occurred during the fourth watch. For instance, it was during this time that Jesus walked on water to reach his disciples who were struggling in a storm. The disciples had been rowing and toiling all night, but the intervention came during this final watch. This wasn't random, it was purposeful. The timing was aligned with divine intention, not human preference. This time frame is often marked by supernatural clarity. Those who walk closely with their purpose, those sensitive to the flow of the Spirit, often find that their most profound moments of insight come during the early morning hours. It is in this time that revelations are revealed, instructions are given, and assignments are released. It is not a time for confusion but for clarity. The world around may still be sleeping, but the realm of the Spirit is awake, alert, and active. In ancient military practice, the fourth watch was when the guards changed. The old shifted out and the new took their place. There's something prophetic about that. When you're waking up at 3 a.m., it could signify a changing of the guard in your own life. Something is transitioning, a shift in responsibility, a new level of calling, or a fresh wave of revelation. It is not always about struggle. Sometimes it is about strategy. The early hours are strategic hours. Heaven has always worked according to order, and this watch is embedded with order and authority. Spiritual leaders, intercessors, and prophets have long understood the weight of the fourth watch. It is often a time for prayer, for intercession, for listening. The distractions of the day are gone. The noise of obligation has faded. It is in this quiet, still moment that the soul becomes quiet enough to hear what God has been saying all along. The urgency of divine timing does not shout. It whispers. And if your spirit is sensitive, you will feel it before you understand it. You may not have known why you started waking up at 3 a.m. You may have thought it was your mind playing tricks or a bad sleep pattern. But waking consistently during this sacred time is often less about biology and more about destiny. Your spirit knows when it's time to listen. Your purpose is being summoned by a frequency that the world doesn't hear. And it usually comes when everything else is still. That's how divine timing works. It doesn't need a crowd, it only needs your attention. Understanding the fourth watch is about recognizing that not all time is equal. Some hours carry more weight than others. 3 a.m. is not just early, it is foundational, it is preparatory, it is a launch pad for revelation and direction. When God acts in the fourth watch, it often precedes major change, breakthrough, or elevation. The significance lies not only in what happens during this hour, but also in how we respond to it. The fourth watch isn't about fear or superstition. It is about alignment with the rhythm of heaven. There are moments when you wake up in the middle of the night, not because of a sound, not because of a nightmare, but because something deep inside you is unsettled. You turn over, glance at the clock, and there it is again 3:00 a.m. No matter how many times it happens, it feels strange. But what if that strangeness is sacred? What if the disturbance is divine? What if the interruption isn't an accident, but an invitation? There is a kind of awakening that doesn't come from the outside world, but from the spirit within. It's not your alarm clock going off. It's your purpose calling your name. Many people try to shake off the feeling and go back to sleep. They assume it's their body reacting to stress, too much caffeine, or a bad sleep cycle. But patterns in the spirit don't function like patterns in the flesh. When you are stirred at the same time night after night, and when your heart is restless for reasons you can't explain, you must consider that this disturbance is not disorder, it's divine order unfolding. Throughout Scripture, God rarely shouted to get someone's attention. He interrupted in moments of silence when the soul was still enough to hear what had always been speaking. Divine disturbance comes to those who have ears to hear beyond noise. It often happens when you are in a season of transition or about to step into one. God does not give instructions without preparation, and preparation often begins in moments where no one is watching. Waking at 3 a.m. could be God's way of pulling you out of routine so He can reveal something radical. Disruption is the beginning of distinction. When God wants to shift your direction, He first changes your rhythm. That's why you can't afford to ignore these interruptions. They are the early signs of new instruction. The quietness of 3 a.m. is not empty, it's full of the presence of God, full of purpose waiting to be unfolded. In these moments, your spirit is open. Your conscious mind is not yet filtering or resisting. You are not performing. You are just present, and in that presence God speaks, not with thunder, not with lightning, but with clarity, with direction, with questions that make you reflect and answers that make you move. These moments are holy ground, the place where rest and revelation collide. Divine disturbance often feels inconvenient. You want sleep, you want rest, but destiny doesn't always wait for your convenience. There are seasons when the call comes in the dark, when the message is whispered in shadows, when your breakthrough begins while everyone else is dreaming. Many of the people who shaped history were awakened not just physically, but spiritually, at odd hours in uncomfortable ways. The discomfort wasn't punishment, it was preparation. They were being invited into conversation before the confirmation ever arrived. When God disturbs your sleep, He's often trying to align your steps. Your plans may be written in the day, but your path is often revealed in the night. The interruptions are not random, they are calibrated moments. You weren't disturbed to be annoyed, you were disturbed to be aware, you were stirred not to worry but to wait. In the stillness of 3 a.m. you are more sensitive to things your daytime distractions would silence. You are tuned to frequencies that only silence can reveal, and in that moment, what seems like insomnia becomes intimacy. Divine disturbance is not just about hearing, it's about responding. When your eyes open and your spirit is alert, and the silence around you grows louder than anything you've heard all day, you are standing in a space where heaven is leaning in. Something is being sent. And if you're willing to receive it, that interruption becomes instruction. That moment of stillness becomes the beginning of strategy. That midnight hour becomes the threshold of a new morning. In the early hours of the morning, long before the noise of life begins to stir, the human mind enters a state of quiet clarity. This is not the clarity that comes from effort or intellect, but the clarity that arrives when the mind is still, when the heart is quiet, and when the world has not yet made its demands. At 3 a.m., when the soul awakens, it does not awaken into chaos, it awakens into clarity. In that moment, the subconscious is closer to the surface, and the line between the physical and the spiritual is thinner than usual. What we often dismiss as mere overthinking or sleeplessness may in fact be the gentle stirring of divine insight. The subconscious mind works tirelessly even while we sleep. It processes the day, wrestles with unspoken fears, contemplates unsolved problems, and organizes ideas that our conscious minds do not have time to fully explore. But between deep sleep and full alertness, there is a brief window when the subconscious and the conscious mind overlap. This overlap creates a sacred space where revelations can rise, where truths you couldn't quite name in the daylight become undeniable. This is often when people report receiving solutions, ideas, or sudden clarity about decisions they've struggled with for days. It's not coincidence. It's design. The reason many people miss the significance of waking up at 3 a.m. is because they don't understand the value of stillness. We live in a noisy world. Distraction is constant. From the time we rise until we sleep again, the mind is bombarded with information, responsibilities, opinions, and pressure. But in the early morning hours, that pressure is paused. There is no demand, no schedule, no expectation, just awareness, and it is in this quiet awareness that God often chooses to speak, not with words you hear with your ears, but with impressions, thoughts, and inner knowing. Mental and emotional processing doesn't always need a therapist or a journal. Sometimes it just needs space, and 3 a.m. gives you that space, not because you asked for it, but because your spirit knows you need it. It is in that still space that suppressed emotions begin to surface. Questions you've avoided start to knock. Dreams that you dismissed return with force. The subconscious mind is not bound by your excuses or your procrastination. It knows what you've buried, and it often brings those things to light in moments when your defenses are down and your soul is still open. When the heart is troubled but cannot explain why, when the mind is awake but doesn't feel anxious, when thoughts come uninvited but leave you feeling inspired, that's not just biology. That's purpose trying to speak through reflection. Many people have testified that their most creative ideas, most healing thoughts, and most significant spiritual breakthroughs happened in the quiet of night. Waking at 3 a.m. is often less about what's wrong and more about what's ready. Something inside you is ready to emerge, to be faced, to be received. That readiness speaks through silence, not noise. Clarity does not always arrive in the form of a loud answer. Sometimes it's a gentle sense of knowing, a conviction that settles like peace in your chest. That kind of clarity is not logical, it's spiritual, and it is most available in the hours when the rest of the world is asleep. In that moment, your mind is not performing, it is receiving, you are not analyzing, you are absorbing. That is why what you understand at 3 a.m. often still makes sense in the morning, even if you can't explain how you knew it. That knowing is not human invention. It is divine alignment. This alignment of mind, heart, and spirit is rare during the rush of the day. But it is common in the calm of the early morning. That is why waking up at 3 a.m. can be a sacred appointment with insight. Not forced insight, but flowing insight. Your deepest truths, your hidden fears, your untapped creativity, all rise to the surface when the noise disappears and the soul has room to speak. The subconscious mind is not a mystery to God. It is one of the instruments He uses to guide, to warn, to heal, and to prepare. And it often plays its most beautiful notes while the rest of the world sleeps. There are many layers to the spiritual life that remain hidden from our immediate senses. And the truth is that the realm of the spirit is far more active than most of us realize. We tend to think of spiritual warfare as something distant or dramatic, but the reality is that much of the battle takes place in the quiet moment, especially in the early hours of the morning. When you wake up at 3 a.m., it is not simply a random moment of sleeplessness. It could very well be a divine alarm clock signaling a shift in the spiritual atmosphere. During the night, especially between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., many believe that the enemy's activity increases. This is known as the fourth watch, and it's considered a time when spiritual warfare is especially intense. This is why waking up at 3 a.m. isn't just about physical rest, it's about positioning yourself for spiritual battle. The fight is not always against visible enemies or circumstances. Sometimes it is a fight in the unseen realm, a fight against the principalities and powers that seek to hinder your destiny. These moments of waking up at 3 a.m. are not interruptions. They are calls to intercede, to stand guard in the Spirit, and to pray for protection, guidance, and breakthrough. The Bible speaks of a need for spiritual watchmen, those who remain vigilant not just during the day, but in the stillness of the night. The enemy doesn't sleep, and neither should we when we are called to prayer and intercession during the most vulnerable hours of the night. What many people don't realize is that spiritual warfare isn't always loud. It's not always marked by visible signs of conflict. Sometimes it's an internal stirring, a sense that something is not right, and a subtle invitation to take action. The 3 a.m. hour offers a unique opportunity to engage with the spiritual realm because everything around you is quiet. The distractions are minimal, and it's in this stillness that you can hear the faintest of whispers. This is the time when spiritual sensitivity is heightened, and the need for spiritual alertness is greatest. The battle is fought not just with words, but with faith and understanding that your prayers at this hour can impact both your present and your future. Waking up at 3 a.m. could signify a direct invitation to engage in spiritual warfare. When you feel this stirring, it may not just be because of an unsettled mind. It may be a prompt from the Holy Spirit to intercede on behalf of a loved one, a situation, or even a nation. It's a reminder that our battles are not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities that seek to undermine the plans of God. This is a call to battle in the spiritual realm, where your prayers and declarations have the power to shift atmospheres, tear down strongholds, and break chains. There is a deep understanding in many spiritual traditions that this hour of the night holds special significance for those who understand its power. When you wake up at 3 a.m., it's as if the veil between the spiritual and physical worlds is thinner. Your prayers are more effective, your sensitivity is sharper, and your ability to discern the movement of the Spirit is increased. This is when the spiritual realm becomes more tangible. This is when you can begin to understand that your words, spoken in the quiet hours, have more weight than you realize. Your declarations have the ability to bind what is bound and loose what is loosed in heaven. It is a time of spiritual dominion. Moreover, engaging in spiritual warfare at 3 a.m. is not merely about protection or intervention. It is also about revelation. When we engage with the Spirit in prayer during this time, we often find that we gain deeper insights into our purpose, our assignments, and the strategies needed to overcome challenges. The battles we fight in the Spirit often precede the victories we see in the natural. Our prayers at this hour can bring clarity to confusion, healing to brokenness, and answers to questions that have plagued us. Spiritual warfare is not always about confrontation. It's often about positioning, timing, and obedience. When you respond to the call to awaken at 3 a.m., you are aligning yourself with a greater purpose, one that goes beyond the physical realm. In these moments, you are not just fighting against the enemy. You are standing in the gap, aligning with God's will for your life, and stepping into your authority as a spiritual warrior. The 3 a.m. hour becomes a sacred time for those who recognize that the battle is not just fought with strength, but with faith, prayer, and obedience. Waking up at 3 a.m. for many can feel like an inconvenience or an interruption, but it may hold much deeper spiritual significance. This time of the early morning is not only a transition between night and day, it is a moment of divine intersection. In this hour, while the world is still, the soul can become more attuned to spiritual activity. The physical body may be seeking rest, but the spirit can be awake and aware, ready for what is to come. This moment is often a divine call to action, urging you to pay attention, to pray, to reflect, or to seek deeper clarity. This hour, often called the fourth watch in spiritual circles, is the time of night when the atmosphere is most still, when distractions are at their lowest. The world is in a quiet slumber, and the noise of daily life hasn't begun. It is in this stillness that God can speak more clearly, when the mind and soul are less distracted by the busyness of life. Your spirit may be awakened at 3 a.m. not by external factors, but by something deeper within, by a divine invitation to connect, to reflect, to pray, or to receive. Many people who have experienced waking up at 3 a.m. repeatedly notice that these moments are often tied to key events or moments in their spiritual lives. These early mornings are not random, but often follow significant decisions or challenges. You may be at a crossroads in life, facing uncertainty or needing guidance, and the 3 a.m. wake-up is the call to engage in a spiritual dialogue with the Creator. In these moments, your heart is more likely to listen, to receive divine instruction, and to tune into a frequency that the noise of the day would drown out. In the early hours, your spirit is often more receptive. Your body is still and your mind has not yet become fully active. The distractions of the world are at bay. It is as though you are more spiritually awake than physically awake. This sensitivity to the unseen world is a powerful reminder that we are not just physical beings. We are spiritual beings. We are meant to engage with the world not only through our senses, but also through our spirit. This awakening is not limited to a physical event, but is the manifestation of spiritual readiness. You are more aware of your purpose, your calling, and your assignments when you wake in these sacred hours. When you wake up at 3 a.m., it's important to consider that this may be an invitation to engage in prayer or reflection. It's an opportunity to become aware of the state of your heart, to discern where your spirit is leading you, and to reflect on the direction in which your life is heading. In times of distress or uncertainty, 3 a.m. may be a pivotal moment for you to ask for guidance, seek peace, or receive clarity. Prayer at this hour is not just about asking for intervention, but also about aligning your heart with the divine will for your life. It is about seeking divine direction in the quietest part of the night, allowing your spirit to receive what your busy mind may often overlook. There are also moments when waking up at 3 a.m. is tied to spiritual assignments. Perhaps God is calling you to intercede on behalf of someone or to pray for a situation you have no knowledge of. In these instances, your spirit may be awakened to pray for a specific purpose or a particular need, even if you do not understand the full extent of what is happening. In these sacred moments, the 3 a.m. wake-up is not a coincidence. It is a divine call to stand in the gap, to intercede, to act in the spiritual realm in a way that can shift the natural realm. These wake-up calls may not always be understood immediately, but as you remain sensitive to the Spirit, you may find that the prayers you utter during these early hours have lasting effects. There is also the reality that 3 a.m. is the time of transition, when the night gives way to the dawn. In spiritual terms, this represents the time of breakthrough, when what has been hidden or unseen comes into the light. Just as the dawn breaks after the darkness, so too can moments of spiritual awakening be a precursor to a new season in your life. These early hours are pregnant with potential, holding the promise of new beginnings and the manifestation of divine promises. Understanding the significance of waking up at 3 a.m. requires the awareness that not all moments are the same, and not all time holds equal importance. Some hours are more spiritually charged than others. Waking at 3 a.m. is not an inconvenience. It is a divine invitation to step into the quietness, to listen, and to respond. It is a moment when heaven may be trying to speak, when you are being given an opportunity to connect with something beyond the physical world and align with the spiritual forces that are shaping your life. The 3 a.m. wake-up is not an interruption. It is an opportunity for transformation. In conclusion, waking up at 3 a.m. is not a mere coincidence or a random disturbance in the rhythm of life. It is often a divine call to attention, a sacred moment where the spiritual realm intersects with the natural. These early hours, marked by stillness and quiet, hold a deep significance, offering clarity, direction, and insight that may be obscured during the busier hours of the day. Whether it is a time for reflection, prayer, intercession, or simply being still in God's presence, the 3 a.m. wake-up is a reminder that the spiritual world is active, even when we are asleep, and that our awareness and responsiveness to these moments can deeply impact our lives. In these quiet hours, your spirit has the opportunity to be more sensitive, receptive, and aligned with divine purpose. Whether you are seeking guidance, fighting spiritual battles, or awaiting breakthrough, the 3 a.m. call can be seen as an invitation to lean into the sacred, to listen more intently, and to act in faith. These moments of divine disturbance are not interruptions, but opportunities for growth, transformation, and alignment with a higher calling. Embrace them with a sense of purpose, for in the stillness of the night, the greatest revelations, insights, and breakthroughs often await.